You know that feeling when you're putting everything into something, time, effort, heart, and then, in a single moment, it all flips? Imagine planning the biggest surprise of your marriage, rehearsing how she'd smile when everyone jumped out, decorating the living room with little memories of your relationship, only to find out she was planning to walk away that same night. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. That's not a hypothetical. That's what actually happened. And I'll tell you this now, by the end of this story you will know why she left and what I found in her bag that changed everything. If you're here for answers, for twists, for real-life betrayal that feels almost too twisted to be true, stay with me. Because the truth wasn't just shocking. It was calculated. Now I know, a lot of people think they know their spouse. They assume years of marriage equals understanding. I thought so too. I'm just a regular guy. 38. Dead. Married 12 years. We lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside Pittsburgh. Nothing fancy, just your average two-story, some lawn flamingos I never agreed to, and a golden retriever named Moxie who thinks she owns the place. I thought my wife Claire and I were solid. Sure, things had gotten a little robotic after the pandemic. The usual, work, dishes, sleep. Rinse and repeat. But who doesn't hit those dry spells? It felt normal, until it didn't. It all started with a half-joking idea. Our daughter Lily said, "Why don't you surprise Mom with something fun? She always plans things for you." That hit me harder than I expected. She was right. Claire used to be the one doing cute things, little love notes in my lunchbox, weekend scavenger hunts around the house, homemade desserts labeled with puns like, "I love you." And somewhere in the noise of life all of that had just stopped. So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's flip the script. I called a few of her closest friends, invited her sister from Seattle, and even got in touch with her old college roommate Mandy, who she hadn't seen in over a decade. I went all in. Ordered decorations that matched the theme of our honeymoon in Charleston, booked her favorite caterer, and even got a local violinist to play her favorite song from our wedding. I didn't tell a soul at first. Not even Lily. I wanted it to be perfect. No leaks, no slips. Claire thought I was working late all week, but I was actually coordinating every detail from my car, texting with vendors, rushing between party stores and bakeries. There were moments I actually got emotional just thinking about how touched she'd be. You know how you replay someone's reaction in your head when you're doing something good for them? I kept seeing her eyes welling up, her laughing crying thing she does when she's overwhelmed. But what I didn't realize, what I couldn't imagine, was that while I was planning this grand gesture, she was carefully packing a bag. Not a travel bag. A leaving bag. One she'd been slowly filling behind my back for weeks. I'm telling you this because a lot of people think they'll see the red flags. That they'll know if their partner is pulling away. But sometimes it's not a slow fade. Sometimes it's silent. Clean. Almost surgical. And it doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors, it comes with small shifts. Like the way she started turning her phone face down even at dinner. Or how she suddenly took long walks, on nights she never used to go out. I asked her once, "Hey, is everything okay?" And she smiled that tired smile and said, "Of course. I'm just tired lately." And I believed her. Because we want to believe the people we love. That's what makes betrayal so brutal. It's never from a stranger. It's from the one person you never thought would lie to your face. But the real twist didn't hit until 2 days before the party. I was in the garage looking for the old photo albums to display at the surprise table, when I noticed her suitcase wasn't there. The black one with the red trim. The one she only uses for serious travel. I checked the shelves, the crawl space, even the back of the minivan. Nothing. I asked her casually, "Hey, did you loan your suitcase to someone?" And she blinked at me like I was asking about quantum physics. "No, why?" she said. Her tone was too neutral. That kind of overly controlled calm. I brushed it off. But that night, when she was in the shower, I noticed her phone vibrating on the nightstand. Just one word on the screen, "Ready?" No name. Just that. Now let me be clear. I'm not the jealous type. But something about that message, the timing, the vagueness, the secrecy, made the hair on my arms stand up. I opened her phone. And yes, I know that's a violation of privacy. But something primal kicked in. You ever get that gut feeling, that drop in your stomach where your body already knows something before your brain catches up? That's what this was. My hands were shaking. But when I unlocked her phone, the message was gone. Not archived, deleted. Like it had never existed. That's when the mental chess match started. I had 2 days until the party. 2 days to either confront her and destroy the surprise, or play along, act clueless, and figure out what was really happening. I chose the latter. I installed a simple GPS tracker on her car. I know it sounds extreme. But I needed answers. Because once doubt enters a marriage, it multiplies like mold. I also checked the guest bedroom closet. Tucked behind an old box of Lily's kindergarten art was a duffel bag, packed tight. Clothes, toothbrush, a separate phone charger, and a man's hoodie. Not mine. I need you to stay with me now, because what I found next shattered the version of my wife I thought I knew. And it wasn't just about leaving. It was who she was leaving for. I started digging. Calls. Patterns. A credit card statement that showed multiple charges at a motel across town. When I brought it up casually, like, "Hey, what were you doing near that motel last week?" She didn't flinch. Just said, "Oh, I met up with a client from work." But Claire's job? She's a therapist. She doesn't meet clients in motels. At that moment, I knew I wasn't being paranoid. I was being lied to. Now here's where things get complicated, because I still loved her. Deep down, I didn't want it to be true. I kept thinking maybe there's a reason, maybe she's depressed, maybe it's not what it looks like. But the problem is, once you start uncovering secrets, you can't unsee them. And then, the night before the party, I did something that still makes my stomach twist. I opened her laptop. I told myself it was just to check the catering invoice she had on file. But I found a draft email. Unsent. Addressed to me. Subject line, "I'm sorry." The body was a full letter. A goodbye. Polite. Cold. She said she felt trapped, like she'd been pretending for years that she didn't want to hurt me but couldn't fake it anymore. That she'd met someone who made her feel seen. The part that broke me? She said, "I know this is the worst possible timing, but I have to choose my life now. Please don't try to find me." So imagine that, you're standing in your kitchen taping up balloons, frosting cupcakes, arranging a happy anniversary banner with gold glitter, while knowing your wife is planning to ghost you. That night, that very night, I couldn't cancel the party. Everyone was already flying in, booked, excited. So I smiled. I played dumb. I acted like nothing was wrong. And she played along too. Like we were two actors in a play neither of us had auditioned for. I remember the exact moment the first knock came at the door. It was 6:42 p.m. The sky outside had that dusky blue tint, just a few minutes before the streetlights flickered on. I was tying a gold ribbon around the base of a centerpiece when the knock echoed through the living room. Claire was upstairs, supposedly getting ready. But I knew she wasn't picking out a dress. She was rehearsing an exit. Her packed bag was zipped and hidden behind the linen closet door. Her purse, the one I'd peeked inside just 20 minutes earlier, was resting on our dresser with that thing inside it. And trust me, we'll get to what it was. But let me just say this for now, it confirmed that she'd been planning this for a lot longer than I ever imagined. Not just days or weeks, but months. I opened the door with a practiced smile. Claire's best friend, Melissa, stepped in first, holding a bottle of wine and one of those oversized, happy anniversary cards with glitter that instantly rubs off on your shirt. Melissa hugged me tight. She was always warm, talkative, quick to fill silence. 12 years, she said, that's like 70 in dog years. I laughed. Not because it was funny but because I had to. That's the thing people forget about betrayal. When you're stuck inside it, you don't get the luxury of falling apart. You become an actor in your own home, improvising every moment so no one sees the storm building under your skin. As the guests trickled in, friends, co-workers, even our neighbor Jeremy who always smelled like lawn fertilizer, I kept scanning Claire's face, watching for cracks. She was perfect. Too perfect. Laughing, hugging, reacting just like the version of her I remembered. And yet, I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She wasn't enjoying the moment. She was managing it. That's when I realized this wasn't just her hiding something. This was her controlling a narrative. Playing out her part until it was time to vanish. And suddenly I had to ask myself, who else was in on this? Now here's where it gets messy. Because in every good mystery, there's always a misdirection, a red herring. And the first one came courtesy of her co-worker, Josh. He was one of those guys who always felt just a little too friendly. You know the type, shirt always unbuttoned one button too low, always leaning in too close when he talked, calling Claire C, like they shared some private inside joke. At the party he showed up late, alone, and immediately started circling Claire like a shark who'd scented blood in the water. He handed her a small black box. "From all of us at the office," he said, but something about the way he looked at her, it didn't feel like a group gift. She opened it and smiled quickly, then tucked it into her purse without showing anyone. And I caught a flash of something in her expression that wasn't gratitude. It was guilt. So naturally I started to wonder, was it him? Was Josh the reason for the motel charges, the deleted texts, the suitcase? But here's the catch, I wanted it to be him. I wanted a simple explanation even if it meant she was cheating. Because that, at least, would be an answer. But as the night wore on and I watched them interact, I started to think maybe he wasn't it. There was distance between them, like she was trying to avoid him, not gravitate toward him. I filed it away, but something didn't fit. Meanwhile, the rest of the party blurred together in that surreal, dreamlike way only fake celebrations can. I went through the motions. Candles lit, music playing, old friends telling stories that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. And all the while, I was calculating. Asterisk, how long until she makes her move? When does she disappear? Asterisk, and then, just after the cake had been cut and half the room had migrated toward the backyard for photos, Claire came up behind me and whispered, "Can we talk?" I followed her to the side hallway near the laundry room, away from the guests. And for a brief moment I thought maybe this was it. The confession. The goodbye. But instead she smiled softly and said, "Thank you. This really means a lot." Her voice was low. Controlled. Too composed for someone allegedly overwhelmed with emotion. I looked into her eyes and said, "You're not really staying, are you?" Her face froze for half a second, then tilted into a practiced confusion. "What are you talking about?" she asked. But she didn't deny it. "Not really." Before I could respond, Lily came bounding over to show us a drawing she made for our anniversary. Claire knelt down and hugged her tightly, too tightly. Like someone imprinting a final memory. And in that moment something in me cracked. Not with anger but with sadness. Because it hit me, she wasn't running from me. She was running from all of it. The house. The role. The expectation of being mom, and wife, and always fine. And maybe, I wasn't just blindsided. Maybe I was part of what she was trying to escape. But then came the twist. Around 10 p.m. most of the guests had gone, and I was cleaning up the kitchen when Melissa pulled me aside. Her face was pale. Uncomfortable. She said, "There's something I should probably tell you. But I didn't want to ruin tonight." My heart skipped. She glanced around then said, "Claire's been distant at work. We all assumed it was stress. But last month she stopped showing up to staff meetings. And the weirdest part? She told HR she was taking a sabbatical. But when I asked her about it, she said she was still working full-time. It didn't add up. That's when the pieces started snapping together. Claire wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving everything. The job, the routine, the version of herself everyone thought they knew. She was erasing her life one piece at a time. But why? What was she running from? That's when I remembered what I found in her purse. Earlier that evening, while she was in the bathroom fixing her makeup, I'd gone into our bedroom. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop again. But something about the weight of her purse, the way she'd been guarding it all night, triggered that gnawing anxiety. So I opened it. Inside was the gift box from Josh, unopened. But underneath that was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't addressed. No names. Just a typed letter. And as I read it, a chill ran down my spine. The letter wasn't from Claire. It was to Claire. And it wasn't romantic. It was a warning. It said, "You're in too deep. You've been watched. He knows. You can't fix this by running. You need to tell the truth." That was all. No signature. No date. Just that message. My hands were shaking. Suddenly this wasn't just about cheating or a broken marriage. This was bigger. Someone else was involved. And whoever it was, they weren't asking, they were threatening. The paranoia started crawling in. What had Claire done? Who had she lied to? And more terrifying, was I in danger too? I replayed everything. The deleted text. Ready? The suitcase. The motel. The fake sabbatical. And now this letter. And I couldn't ignore the coincidence. 2 weeks ago, there was a local news story trending online about a whistleblower who vanished from a nearby mental health clinic. A woman who had uncovered patient records being falsified. Claire worked in therapy. What if the connection wasn't personal, but professional? What if she knew something she wasn't supposed to know? I didn't say anything that night. Not to Melissa. Not to Claire. I tucked the letter back where I found it and waited. Because if she was running for a reason bigger than me, I needed the full picture. But I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. That whatever she was hiding, it was closing in. And then just before midnight she said it. "I think I'm going to turn in early. It's been a long day." I nodded. Played it cool. But I knew she wasn't going to bed. I followed her, 10 minutes later, barefoot and silent. Her bag was gone from the linen closet. Her purse was clutched tightly under her arm. She didn't turn on any lights. Just slipped through the front door and walked into the night. I didn't stop her. I followed her. And what I saw next, Changed everything. The air outside was thick with that late summer humidity that sticks to your skin, even at midnight. I stayed back just enough to avoid being seen, keeping to the sidewalk shadows as Claire walked briskly down the block, her movements sharp, determined. She wasn't just taking a stroll to clear her head. This was purposeful. Every so often she glanced over her shoulder, like she was expecting someone, or afraid someone might be following. If I hadn't been shaking with a cocktail of heartbreak and adrenaline, I might have laughed at the irony. She didn't know the man tailing her was her own husband. She didn't go to the car. That's what threw me off first. She passed right by it, keys in hand, but kept walking. 2 more blocks. Then turned down a narrow side street where the streetlights were half burned out. I nearly lost her there for a second. My heart was pounding so hard I worried she'd hear it. She finally stopped in front of a beige house with peeling paint and no visible number. I recognized it vaguely. It belonged to a man named Paul Schaefer. An older patient of hers who'd made the local paper once for an altercation at a pharmacy. He wasn't violent exactly, but he'd been described as disturbed and unstable. Claire had mentioned him years ago when she first took him on as a client. She hadn't talked about him since. She knocked once. The door opened almost immediately, like he'd been waiting for her. She stepped inside. My stomach dropped. I waited across the street behind a low fence, watching the flicker of lights inside. At one point I saw Claire's silhouette in the window, arguing with someone, gesturing wildly. The light cut out and the room went dark. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. And just when I was about to step forward and do something, anything, the front door opened again. But it wasn't Claire. It was Paul. Or at least I think it was. He looked thinner, pale, wearing an oversized hoodie with the hood up. He scanned the street, staring far too long in my direction, though I ducked just in time. He stepped out, locked the door behind him, and walked off in the opposite direction. Claire never came out. I panicked. What was she doing in there? Why was Paul leaving alone? My mind went straight to worst-case scenarios. Was she being held against her will? Was she involved in something illegal? Something dangerous? I crossed the street, heart thudding, and tried the door. Locked. I circled to the side window. All dark. No movement. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the house, just in case. Then walked back toward home with a head full of questions and zero answers. Back at the house, everything felt heavier. I kept replaying her face, the way she whispered, "Thank you," at the party like a woman saying goodbye to someone she pitied. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the living room, scrolling through search results, reading through old emails we'd exchanged, trying to see if I missed something. A pattern. A signal. Anything. And then, just before dawn, something chilling happened. I went to recheck the letter I found in her purse, the one that warned her she was being watched. But it was gone. Her purse was still in the bedroom. Same contents, same box from Josh. But the letter? Vanished. I searched everywhere. Under the bed, in the closet, even inside the bathroom trash just in case. Nothing. I knew I hadn't imagined it. I read it word for word. But now it was like it never existed. That morning Claire came back. Around 6:30 a.m. She smelled faintly like cigarettes, which she never smoked, and her hair was damp like she'd recently showered. She walked in quietly and froze when she saw me sitting on the couch. We locked eyes. She blinked, then said, "You're up early." I stared at her, my voice tight. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded. "Me either." And just like that she walked past me and went upstairs. I didn't stop her. I wanted to. But I needed to be smart. I needed proof. The next few days were a blur. I tried to act normal. But I also started looking deeper. I pulled our phone records. Most of the calls were routine. But one number popped up repeatedly, especially late at night. I traced it to a prepaid burner phone. No name, no address. I considered calling it. But something held me back. Instead, I called someone else. Mandy, Claire's old college roommate. I'd invited her to the party, but she texted last minute that she couldn't make it. What struck me was that Claire never mentioned her not coming. When I called Mandy, her tone was off. Not cold exactly, but hesitant. Like she was walking on a tightrope. "I probably shouldn't talk," she said. Claire made me promise not to say anything. Say anything about what? A long pause. She's scared. More than she's letting on. And I don't know the whole story, but she didn't want anyone else involved. Involved in what? Another pause. Then Mandy said something that made my blood run cold. She said if you started digging, it could get dangerous for both of you. I tried to push her. But she shut down after that. Said she'd already said too much. And just like that she hung up. I stared at my phone in silence, suddenly feeling like the ground beneath me wasn't solid anymore. What was Claire running from? What had she gotten herself into that was big enough to ask old friends to lie, to delete messages, to leave behind a husband and daughter? That night I searched the house. Everywhere. I needed to know the truth. I opened drawers she never used, lifted couch cushions, even unscrewed the back panel of her vanity. And that's when I found it, tucked behind a stack of old holiday cards. A small USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. One folder. Password protected. I tried everything, birthdays, names, wedding dates. Nothing worked. I was about to give up when I tried something random, her father's middle name. She hated him. Hadn't spoken to him in years. But for some reason that was it. The folder opened. Inside were 2 video files. Both grainy. Both taken secretly. One showed a man in a lab coat arguing with another person. Faces unclear, but the location looked like a medical facility. The second video was even more disturbing. It showed a woman, young, early 20s, being restrained in a hospital bed. She was screaming something over and over, but the audio was muffled. And then a date popped up on the bottom of the screen. June 14, 2009. That was the year Claire finished grad school. The year before we met. I sat there frozen. I didn't know what I was looking at. But I knew this. Claire had witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see. And for 15 years she'd buried it. Until now. I was about to copy the files when my screen went black. The laptop shut off. Just died. I tried turning it back on. Nothing. Pulled the battery, tried a hard reset. Still nothing. And when I checked the USB drive again, it was hot. Burning hot. When I plugged it into another device, blank. Completely wiped. Someone knew I found it. The next morning I got a call. No caller ID. Just silence on the other end. Then a click. Then a voice, distorted. Stop digging. Or next time, it won't be your computer. And then the line went dead. That's when I knew, this wasn't about a marriage anymore. This was about a secret that someone would do anything to keep buried. But the worst part? That night I found something else. A photo. Folded and hidden in the back of one of Claire's old journals. A photo of her standing outside a building that no longer exists. And right next to her, was me. Except the date on the back was from before we ever met. I must have stared at that photo for a solid 5 minutes before my brain caught up to what I was seeing. It was yellowing at the edges, curled slightly, like it had been folded and unfolded more than once. Claire was standing in front of a low stone building with rust-colored bricks and a crooked metal door. Her hair was longer, straighter, and she looked younger, but it was definitely her. Standing beside her was a man. Smiling. Hand resting casually on her shoulder. Was me. Except it wasn't. Not exactly. It looked like me, same jawline, same build, same eyes. But I had never been in that photo. I had never been to that place. And the date scrawled in pen on the back, April 3, 2007 was nearly 2 full years before we ever met. Or so I thought. I felt sick. Like reality had just taken a sharp left turn and left me behind. This wasn't just a twist. It was a complete fracture in everything I believed about our relationship. Had she known me before I thought we met? Was she hiding a relationship we once had? Or worse, was this some kind of planted memory? Something meant to make me doubt what I remembered? Every time I thought I had a grasp on the truth, it unraveled into something darker. More elaborate. I sat back, clutching the photo, and all I could think was, if this is real, then everything I know about Claire and about myself might be a lie. That same evening, as if things weren't already spiraling, I got a text from my sister, Danielle. Just 4 words, can we talk? Urgent. Danielle and I aren't especially close. We check in on birthdays, holidays, and the occasional family drama, but never like this. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, whispering like she was afraid of being overheard. I got something weird today, she said. In the mail. No return address. Just a manila envelope with my name on it. What was inside? A picture. Of you. At a funeral. That stopped me cold. What funeral? I asked. I haven't been to one in years. That's the thing, she said. You were standing next to a casket with our mom's name on it. But mom's alive. You were crying in the photo. Claire was standing beside you. And the date at the bottom said *2010*. My skin went cold. I asked her to send me the photo. She hesitated, then said, I already did. But before I could take another look, it was gone. The envelope, the picture, everything. I left it on the kitchen counter and went to grab my phone. When I came back, it was just gone. Gone. Just like the USB. Just like the letter in Claire's purse. Pieces of the truth being snatched away as fast as we could grab them. I tried to tell myself maybe she misplaced it. Maybe she was wrong. But deep down I knew better. Someone was pulling strings not just to cover something up, but to play with us. Like we were mice in a maze, and every clue we followed only led to a deeper trap. That night I couldn't stay in the house. Claire had gone to bed early again, without a word, without a glance, and I couldn't stand being under the same roof. I drove. Just drove aimlessly for hours. Through the suburbs, into the city, up winding roads I barely recognized until I found myself parked in front of an old stone building. Not just any building, the same one from the photo. I don't know how I got there. I hadn't seen it in years. But something in me must have remembered. A part of my brain I didn't even realize was still functioning on its own. The place looked abandoned. The windows were boarded, weeds crawled up the sides, and the sign had been ripped off. But the door? Unlocked. Inside it smelled like mildew and dust. The air was dense, like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. My flashlight caught glimpses of rusted metal furniture, papers scattered across the floor, and graffiti that didn't make sense. Symbols instead of words, like someone was trying to hide meaning in plain sight. Then, in the far back room, I found something that sent my heart straight into my throat. A filing cabinet. Still intact. One drawer labeled in faint black ink. C. Adams 2007 to 2009. Claire's maiden name. I opened it. Inside were 3 folders. One was filled with patient intake forms. The second was full of old appointment logs. But the third was a journal. Handwritten. Detailed. And not by Claire. It belonged to someone named Dr. Evelyn Grady. That name rang a bell. I'd heard Claire mention her years ago. She was one of Claire's supervising psychologists when she first entered clinical practice. But Claire told me she died in a car crash during a conference trip. As I read through the pages, it became painfully clear. Evelyn hadn't died accidentally. The journal was littered with paranoia. She believed someone was watching her. That certain patients were being manipulated. That records were being altered after her sessions. The deeper I read, the more frantic her tone became. She mentioned a specific subject, labeled Case 83, Compliance Drift. No name. No gender. Just descriptions. Extreme emotional regulation, dissociative memory gaps, artificial identity reinforcement. It sounded like someone had been programmed. And then I found a page that made my blood run cold. Subject 83 continues to regress into scripted responses when confronted with pre-trauma stimuli. Facial recognition triggers are unreliable. Relationship constructs may have been implanted. The handwriting got shakier. Suspect Claire A. may be compromised. Subject exhibits fabricated romantic recall. Must report to oversight. The final entry read simply, "They know." And then, nothing. I stumbled out of that building like I'd just seen a ghost. Because if what I just read was even half true, Claire wasn't just hiding something. She might not even know who she really was. Or who I was to her. Was our marriage a real relationship, or part of some manufactured reality? Had we been manipulated to find each other? Was I the subject, or was she? I barely made it home without crashing. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My mind was spinning out of control. And just when I thought the rabbit hole couldn't go any deeper, it did. The next day I took Lily to school. I needed normalcy. A small breath of routine in the middle of chaos. As I walked her to her classroom, her teacher, a sweet older woman named Mrs. Galvez, pulled me aside. She looked nervous. Said Lily had been drawing strange pictures. I followed her into the classroom, and she handed me a stack of Lily's crayon sketches. My hands went numb. Every picture was the same. A tall building with no windows, a crooked metal door, and stick figures with wide black eyes. One picture had words scribbled in a child's handwriting, "Mom cries when she drives past it." I asked Claire that night. Straight up. "Do you know a place with a metal door and no windows? Something Lily might have seen?" She didn't answer. Just stared at me, then turned and walked out of the room. I followed her into the hallway. "Claire, just tell me the truth. Are we in danger?" She turned slowly, eyes wide and empty, and said something I'll never forget. Asterisk, I think we already were. Asterisk. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and found an envelope on the welcome mat. No one around. No sign of who left it. Inside was a single photo. It was me. Standing outside that stone building. Only this time, I was holding a shovel. It started with a single car parked across the street, headlights off, engine idle, windows tinted just dark enough that I couldn't see inside. It was there the morning after I confronted Natalie, the morning after I found that black duffel bag hidden behind the laundry room drywall. At first, I told myself it was just a neighbor's guest, or maybe someone lost and checking their GPS. But that same car showed up again the next evening, idling in the same spot for nearly 30 minutes before disappearing down the block. It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like surveillance. I tried brushing it off, because I wanted to believe this was just paranoia, but I could feel something shift. Not in my marriage anymore. Not in my relationship with Natalie. That damage had already been done. This was something deeper, wider, far more dangerous. Something outside of our failing relationship had caught wind of what I'd discovered, and now it felt like I'd wandered into a place I didn't belong. The next morning I found the duffel bag missing. I know I didn't move it, I hadn't told anyone else about it, and when I checked the utility closet where I'd stuffed it beneath the boiler pipes, it was gone. Just gone. I ran upstairs thinking maybe Natalie had found it and hid it again, but she was already gone for work. Or at least that's what I thought. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I checked her GPS location, the one we kept on by default in case of emergencies, and suddenly it was turned off. For someone who always hated off-the-grid behavior, that was a red flag. A huge one. It felt like I was being boxed in from every side, and every familiar safety net I'd relied on, my marriage, my home, my sanity, was slipping right through my hands. That afternoon, I received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photo, grainy clearly from a distance, of me standing in our backyard next to the exact spot I'd found the duffel bag. On the back, a handwritten message in red ink read, "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." I didn't even realize I'd dropped the envelope until I heard it hit the floor. That was the moment the line between suspicion and real, tangible fear completely disappeared. Someone was watching me closely enough to know when I was alone, what I'd found, and exactly where I had found it. And worse, they wanted me to stop looking. Which only made me want to dig deeper. I tried to reach out to Matt, my best friend from college, someone who'd always been more like a brother to me than a friend. I remembered he'd done a few freelance gigs in cybersecurity and might know how to trace the photo or the note. But he didn't answer. Later that evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I picked up, half expecting some cryptic voice or another threat, but instead, it was Matt's girlfriend. She sounded frantic. Said he'd left the night before to meet someone about a personal favor, and hadn't come home. She'd called the police but was told to wait 48 hours before filing anything official. I hung up feeling hollow. Was his disappearance connected to me? To Natalie? To that damn duffel bag? The thought that someone else was being punished just for knowing me made everything worse. It made me question every single person I trusted. And it made me ask the one question I didn't want to ask. What if Natalie had something to do with it? Here's where things took an even darker turn. I received a package, this time hand-delivered, not by a courier or a postal worker, but by someone who rang the doorbell, left the box on the porch, and walked away so quickly they disappeared by the time I opened the door. Inside the box was Matt's watch, still ticking, and a burner phone. No note. Just those two items as if to say, "You're next." I turned the phone on and found only one contact stored under the name, "Do Not Call." Of course I called it. It rang twice, then picked up with a burst of static followed by a voice I didn't recognize. "Come, Colt. You were warned. This is your final one." Then the call ended, and the number was instantly wiped from the call log. I couldn't trace it. Couldn't call it back. Couldn't even prove it happened. I spent the next 2 nights not sleeping. Not really. Every creak in the house felt like an intruder. Every flicker of the porch light felt like a signal. I put tape on the doors to check for movement. Installed a motion camera outside. And even then, I still felt like I was losing. Because this wasn't just about Natalie anymore. This wasn't about a wife with secrets. This felt like an operation. Something practiced. Something calculated. And if they could make Matt disappear, take the duffel bag without a trace, shut down Natalie's GPS, and get close enough to snap pictures in my backyard, what else were they capable of? But the worst blow came from someone I never expected. My own sister, Rachel. I called her out of desperation, hoping to find grounding. She'd always been level-headed, the kind of person who saw through chaos and gave me clarity. But when I told her everything, the party, the hidden bag, the photo, the watch, she went quiet. Not shocked. Not scared. Just silent. After a long pause, she finally said, "You weren't supposed to find that bag." I froze. My pulse actually stopped for a second. "What do you mean?" I asked. But she wouldn't elaborate. Said she couldn't talk anymore and hung up. I called her back 3 times, no answer. That was when I realized Rachel knew something, maybe had known for a while. Which begged the next impossible question: how deep does this go? At this point, I wasn't even sure what I was trying to uncover. A secret affair? A criminal ring? Something bigger? Every time I thought I had a lead, it vanished. Every time I thought I found someone I could trust, they pulled away. But the message was clear. I was in over my head. Still, something inside me refused to let go, because it wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. If Natalie had been trying to disappear that night, if this was all part of a larger escape plan, then who or what was she running from? And more importantly, why had she chosen to involve me at all? What I didn't know, what would change everything, was that someone else had been watching her long before I ever did. And they just left something in my mailbox that rewrote everything I thought I knew about my wife. I opened the mailbox expecting more threats, another warning scribbled on a grainy photo, or maybe another burner phone I couldn't trace. But instead, I found a manila envelope with my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Me. Familiar. Too familiar. I brought it inside, hands trembling slightly, and sat at the kitchen table where everything had started weeks ago with that damn look on Natalie's face. I opened the envelope slowly, expecting the worst, but what I found made my breath catch in my throat. It was a police report. One dated nearly 15 years ago. The header said, "Missing Person Report, Natalie Jane Thomas." The photo attached was of a teenage girl. Dark hair. Pale skin. Same piercing eyes. It was Natalie, or someone who looked exactly like her. But the report listed her as having disappeared from a small town in upstate New York, 2 years before I ever met her. That was the moment everything stopped making sense. I sat there frozen, my eyes scanning every line of that report, heart thudding in my ears as the edges of reality blurred. Natalie had told me she was from Ohio, that she had one estranged sibling, that her parents were dead. She had shared stories about boarding school, her first job in Chicago, a bad breakup in her early 20s. But none of those details matched what I was holding in my hands. According to this document, she had vanished from foster care at 17, after a fire destroyed half the house she'd been living in. No body was ever found. No clues left behind. Just gone. Presumed dead. And the kicker? The case had been reopened 6 months ago under a new name. My name. Someone had flagged the case and linked it to me, attaching an anonymous note that read, "She changed her identity. She's still alive. She's married now." I didn't know what I was looking at anymore. I didn't know who I was anymore. Had I been living with someone who wasn't even who she claimed to be? Was Natalie even her real name? And if she had faked her past, faked her records, then who else had been in on it? The car outside. The duffel bag. The person who took it. The sudden GPS blackout. Matt's disappearance. Rachel's cryptic warning. Were they all trying to protect me, or protect her? The more I thought about it, the more I realized something horrific. Maybe I hadn't stumbled into a conspiracy, I'd been living inside one the entire time. Still reeling, I searched for the case number online, not expecting much, but what I found left me cold. A Reddit thread, buried deep in a true crime forum, about a string of women in the early 2000s who'd faked their deaths to escape, a man referred to only as the cleaner. The thread was filled with blurry screenshots, clips from old YouTube mystery podcasts, and grainy CCTV stills that made my skin crawl. One of the commenters had posted a name, Natalie J. Thomas. Another had posted a low-resolution image of a woman walking into a bank in 2009 in Albany. The timestamp and location matched the city where Natalie told me she used to work for a nonprofit. In one of the replies, someone claimed Natalie had been part of a witness protection type program after testifying against a man linked to multiple trafficking rings and fraud schemes. No official records backed it up. Nothing on the surface. But now I had a name I'd never heard before, tied to a life I never knew existed. I felt sick. Physically ill. Because if that was true, if Natalie had been hiding from someone dangerous, someone capable of covering up entire identities, then me finding the duffel bag, digging around, confronting her. I hadn't just blown up our marriage. I might have exposed her location. Put us both in real, imminent danger. And yet, a more unsettling question crept into my mind. Asterisk, was she really running from someone else? Or was she the one they should have been running from? Asterisk. It was then that the doorbell rang again. Same ring pattern. Quick. 2 short buzzes. I rushed to the door, but there was no one there, just another package. This time inside was a small, clear vial of blood. Attached was a single slip of paper that read, "Your friend talked too much." I dropped it instantly. My mouth went dry. My legs felt like rubber. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was punishment. And it meant Matt was likely already dead. And now, I had blood in my hands, literal and metaphorical, and no idea how to explain it to anyone without sounding completely insane. I sat alone in the dark that night, the house too quiet, too still, replaying every moment I'd ever shared with Natalie. Every laugh. Every story. Every time she'd stiffen when I asked about her childhood. Every moment she flinched when the doorbell rang too late at night. She hadn't just been hiding things. She'd been surviving. But the question was, asterisk from whom? Asterisk and more pressingly, asterisk why had it all started unraveling now? Asterisk had someone finally found her? Or had I just unknowingly triggered the very thing she'd spent years trying to prevent? The final blow came when I plugged the burner phone back in and found a voicemail that hadn't been there before. The voice was Natalie's, breathless, terrified. If you're hearing this, it means you opened the envelope. You weren't supposed to. I didn't want you involved. I tried to protect you. But now it's too late. Don't trust Rachel. Don't trust anyone. Especially not me. Then silence. Then the message deleted itself. Just like that. I stared at the dark screen of the burner phone, pulse racing, mind fractured. The woman I married had just warned me not to trust her. And in that moment, I finally understood something terrifying. I hadn't uncovered the truth. I'd cracked open the surface of something so deep, so buried, it was never meant to be found. And whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning started with silence, and that kind of silence that makes your stomach churn like the world's holding its breath. No birds outside, no neighborhood dogs barking, no sounds from the upstairs bathroom where Natalie used to hum while brushing her teeth. Just that awful, creeping quiet that made every second feel like something was watching, waiting. I didn't know what time it was, didn't remember falling asleep, just woke up on the living room floor with that police report still clutched in my hand and the burner phone dead on the table. My body was sore like I'd been running in my sleep. My heart still pounding like I had. I turned toward the hallway, unsure if I expected Natalie to be there or someone else entirely, but what I saw instead was Rachel, sitting on the bottom stair, just watching me. Her face was pale, eyes red like she hadn't slept, and she held something in her hand, my spare car key. You need to decide right now, she said, voice hollow. Whether you want to stay alive or figure out what really happened to Natalie. No greeting. No pleasantries. Just that. I sat up slowly, still disoriented. I wanted to believe this was just another scare tactic, just another layer of misdirection in a twisted game I hadn't asked to play, but the fear in Rachel's eyes wasn't fake. It was worse than fear. It was resignation. She tossed the car key to me, then held out a small flash drive. This has everything, she said. Names, dates, files. The people she worked with. The people who died because of her. I've had it for years. I was supposed to destroy it. But I couldn't. My hand hovered over the flash drive, unsure whether to take it or run from it. Rachel was the one who'd warned me weeks ago. Who told me Natalie wasn't who she claimed. But now she was here, not as a friend, not even as a sister-in-law, but as someone forced to choose between family and the truth, and it looked like she'd already picked a side. I asked her point blank if she'd known Natalie's real identity. Her response was a slow nod. She told me everything, right before she disappeared the first time. I didn't understand. The first time? Rachel blinked like she hadn't meant to say that. She rubbed her face, shook her head. She left you before years ago. She said it was for work. But that's not what happened. She staged the whole thing. New ID, new city. She was going to vanish again permanently. Then she found out she was pregnant. That's the only reason she came back. I swear the ground shifted beneath me. There were things I could take, violence, confusion, even betrayal. But that hit differently. Natalie had miscarried before we could have kids. We'd grieved together. We'd cried together. Or at least I thought we had. The idea that she had been planning to leave, that she'd only come back because of a child, undid something in me I didn't even know was breakable. Rachel didn't wait for me to respond. She just pointed to the flash drive again and said, if you open this you can't undo it. And if they find out you have it, they won't just come for you. They'll erase everything you love. That includes your sister. That includes your mother. Think very carefully. She was giving me a choice. Stay ignorant and safe, or open the floodgates and risk everything. The problem was I couldn't go back now. I had seen too much. Felt too much. I'd buried my best friend. Questioned my entire marriage. Spent nights staring at the ceiling wondering if I was sleeping beside a stranger or someone who once killed to survive. I took the flash drive. Slid it into my pocket. But that wasn't the end of it. Rachel stood back toward the door and gave me one last look. They already know you've started digging, she said. If I were you, I'd run. But we both know you won't. So if you're going to burn everything down, do it fast. That night, I drove to the lake house we used to visit during the summers. It was the only place left that hadn't been touched by this madness. But as soon as I pulled up the gravel driveway, my headlights hit something that froze me in place. My mother's car. Parked in the shadows. She was supposed to be in Florida visiting my aunt. Heart pounding, I approached the front porch, and found the door cracked open. The scent of smoke hung faint in the air, not fire but cigarettes. The same brand Natalie's old case file said her foster father used to smoke. Inside, everything was too still. And on the dining table, lit by a single lamp, was a stack of old photographs. They were spread out like a timeline. One was of Natalie as a teenager, standing in front of a house with boarded-up windows. Another showed her walking with a man I didn't recognize. Another, Natalie with my mother, smiling, arms around each other like old friends. That made no sense. They'd only met once, at our wedding. But the timestamp on the photo was from 2006. 2 years before I ever met Natalie. I staggered backward, head spinning, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And that's when I heard the voice. Come, gentle. Behind me. You were never supposed to see that. I turned, and there she was. Natalie. Or whoever she really was. Standing in the doorway, older, changed, but very much alive. She stepped forward, slow and measured, eyes shining with something I couldn't place. Not relief. Not guilt. Something colder. Something resolved. You have questions, she said softly, and I'll give you answers. But not all of them. Not yet. Because if I do, you'll have to make a choice, and you're not ready for that. And just like that, I realized the choice Rachel had given me wasn't the only one I'd face. Now Natalie was back. And whatever truth she held wasn't just going to destroy my understanding of her, it was going to unravel everything I believed about myself, my family, and the life I thought I'd built from scratch. Only now, I wasn't sure I had ever been the one building it. Maybe I'd been placed inside it. Like a piece in a game I didn't know I was playing. And now the rules had changed again. Natalie didn't flinch when I stepped back, didn't try to follow or stop me when I glanced toward the door ready to run. That was the most terrifying part, how calm she was. Like she'd expected this moment. Like she'd orchestrated it. She sat down at the edge of the couch, brushed some imaginary dust off her sleeve, and motioned to the chair across from her like this was just another quiet night between husband and wife. I need you to stop thinking of me as your wife, she said. That part of me died the day I realized you wouldn't survive what's coming unless I left. I didn't sit. I couldn't. I stood frozen there, every muscle wound tight, heart jackhammering, because I knew if I let her speak freely, everything I'd clung to, love, grief, sanity, was going to unravel into something far more dangerous. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her coat pocket and set it on the coffee table between us. On it were names. Not just any names. My old boss. Rachel's husband. The pediatrician who delivered my sister's baby last fall. All people I knew, trusted. And next to each name was a number. A date. A brief note. They're all part of it, she said. Every single one. It's been going on for years. Generations even. They work in the cracks of the system. Private hospitals, family courts, adoption networks, even military databases. You thought you stumbled onto a lie. You didn't. You were born inside it. I shook my head, refusing to let it take root in my mind. It sounded delusional. It had to be. But then she pointed to a small symbol at the bottom corner of the page. A triangular spiral with a tiny tear-shaped mark inside it. Look familiar? She asked. My breath caught. That same mark had been carved into the bottom of the burner phone. I'd seen it again on the photo Rachel showed me of Natalie as a teenager. The same one with the man in the background who I now knew wasn't her foster father. He was someone else entirely. Someone connected to all of this. I demanded answers, screamed them honestly. Who were these people? Why the secrecy? Why the mind games, the disappearing act, the threats? She stood then slowly and said, because your name was supposed to be on that list too. Years ago. Before I pulled it. Those words burned. My legs buckled. I sat without meaning to. Natalie walked to the window and pulled back the curtain, revealing 2 black SUVs parked down the hill near the tree-line. No lights on. No movement. Just waiting. She said they'd been following me for weeks now. That every time I turned off my phone, changed routes, asked the wrong questions, I was putting myself closer to being extracted and silenced. But here's what twisted the knife. Rachel knew. Not just knew, *help star. The moment Natalie said it, I saw it all clearly. The way Rachel always knew where I'd been. The flash drive. The way she'd pushed me to dig deeper, not to warn me, but to draw the others out. I was never the hunter. I was the bait. Natalie said Rachel had flipped years ago, after something went wrong during a job in Arizona. She was promised immunity, money, protection. But in return, she had to make sure I never uncovered the truth about Natalie's past. About my own. Because it wasn't just Natalie's records that had been scrubbed, it was mine too. My birth certificate. My adoption papers. All forged. All fabricated. Your parents didn't die in a car accident, Natalie said. They were taken. Because they tried to expose this. And you were the loose end. Something in me snapped. I stood, hands shaking, grabbed the paper, shouted about how this made no sense, how it couldn't be real, but every fiber of my body screamed otherwise. This wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't just some rogue agent wife and a messed up sister-in-law. This was a full-scale network of people, doctors, cops, therapists, even government contractors, collaborating to manipulate lives, erase identities, and keep secrets buried deep beneath suburban neighborhoods and smiling family portraits. Natalie told me I had one shot to make it out. There was a compound 2 states over, a safe house built by people like her who'd defected. People trying to tear the whole thing down. But the moment I left that lake house, the moment I stepped into open territory, I'd be watched, hunted. And worse, I'd be bringing the fight directly to the people who still believed I was just an ordinary guy caught in an identity crisis. Then, from the hallway, came the sound that shattered what little calm remained. A child's voice. Laughing. Giggling. A door creaked open and in walked a girl. Maybe 7. Blonde. Blue-eyed. Wearing a worn-down jacket that looked 2 sizes too big. Natalie froze. I stared at the girl, stunned. Because she looked like Natalie. And like me. The girl ran straight to Natalie and hugged her legs and with that same laugh looked up at me and said, "Hi, Daddy." The ground dropped out from under me. Natalie's voice was a whisper. "You weren't supposed to know about her yet. She's why I came back. They want her too. But I'm not letting them have her." That was the moment the stakes exploded. This wasn't about me getting answers. This was about saving a daughter I never knew existed. A daughter who was now the most valuable target in a conspiracy built to erase people like us. And outside, the headlights finally flicked on. They were coming. The room spun with a kind of silence that screamed louder than any siren. My daughter, my daughter, stood beside Natalie, clutching her hand like she'd known her whole life this was the only safe place she'd ever have. The truth hadn't just broken me, it had cracked the entire timeline of my life wide open. All the years I'd spent searching for meaning, mourning a marriage I thought I'd lost, questioning my own memories, none of it had prepared me for this. And now, standing in that living room with headlights glowing through the curtains and the heavy hum of SUV engines idling just out of reach, I realized there was no more room for fear or denial. It was time. Not to run. Not to beg for answers. But to fight for the truth, however twisted and unspeakable it had become. Natalie pressed something into my palm. A flash drive. The same one I thought was destroyed weeks ago, the one Rachel had claimed was corrupted. Natalie said it held raw surveillance footage, unredacted documents, transcripts, and the master list of everyone involved in this black market human identity network. It was the kind of file people died for. People like my parents. People like me. She whispered that if we could get it to someone named Grayson, the last honest federal prosecutor tied to the original case, it might finally expose the organization for what it was. A decades-long psychological warfare experiment embedded into real families, targeting children marked from birth to be reinvented into controlled assets. Then the first bullet shattered the front window. Natalie grabbed our daughter and ducked. I threw the coffee table on its side just as 2 more rounds slammed into the wall behind us. Someone was yelling outside. Men in tactical gear stormed the porch, moving with practiced precision. But what none of them knew was that Natalie had wired the place, an old defensive habit from her training years. When the first soldier kicked in the door, she detonated the flashbang remotely. He dropped instantly, groaning, eyes streaming. I rushed him, grabbed his weapon, and slammed the door shut behind me. For a moment there was silence again. And in that breath of quiet, I made my choice. We couldn't stay here. We couldn't run to the compound. They'd cut off every exit. But I remembered the old fire road behind the property, barely visible through the brush, an old logging path that wasn't on any map. If we made it to the clearing, if we could just upload the flash drive using the satellite transponder buried out there, we might have a shot at releasing everything in one fell sweep. The whole conspiracy dumped online. Names, files, operations, all of it. But as we slipped out the back door and into the woods, a new shadow stepped into the clearing. Rachel. She was dressed like them now. Tactical black. Earpiece. Gun drawn. But her face, it was cracked wide open with regret. I tried to stop them from killing you, she said. I never meant for it to go this far. But now you have to give me the drive. You don't understand what happens if that data goes public. There are families, children, who won't survive the fallout. I stepped between her and Natalie. My voice felt like gravel in my throat. You don't get to talk about family. But Rachel wasn't here to argue. She was here to offer a deal. If I handed over the drive, she'd let my daughter go. You can walk away, she said. You and Natalie. Start over. You've done it before. Natalie whispered, she's lying. They never let anyone walk away. Not anymore. That's when I saw Rachel's hand twitch. Her finger tightening on the trigger. An instinct kicked in. I stepped sideways, pulling Natalie and our daughter with me as Rachel fired, missing by inches. The next shot would have hit me square in the chest, but Natalie lunged first, slamming into Rachel, the two of them crashing into the dirt with a violent thud. I scooped up the flash drive and ran toward the clearing, heart pounding like a war drum, praying Natalie would follow. Behind me there was a single gunshot. Then silence. I didn't stop to look back. The clearing, I fell to my knees, clawing through the leaves until my fingers hit the cold steel of the transponder case. I jammed the drive in, hit the power switch, and waited. The screen flickered. Uploaded, 4%. Then 12%. Then 39%. That's when the second team arrived. Voices shouted through megaphones ordering surrender. Red lasers cut through the trees. But the file kept climbing, 68%, 77%, 92%. A shot rang out and I screamed, not knowing if it had hit me until I saw blood on my arm. I kept my hand on the drive. One more second. Just one. Then, upload complete. Every screen connected to the dark web. Every whistleblower archive. Every journalist database Natalie had configured. The files were out. The truth was free. They didn't shoot me after that. They couldn't. Because now they were exposed. And if I died, I'd become a symbol of their collapse. Then someone stepped into the clearing. A man I didn't recognize. Suited. Come. Pale blue tie. He smiled like this was all just business. You've made things difficult, he said, looking almost amused. But not unfixable. People will panic. They'll question. But they'll forget. They always do. I stood, shaking, shielding my daughter behind me. They won't forget this time. He just tilted his head and replied, we never needed them to forget you. Just to doubt you. He left without another word, disappearing into the trees with his men. I collapsed there in the clearing, holding my daughter, the transponder still humming beside us. Natalie stumbled out of the woods minutes later, blood on her hands but alive. She didn't say what happened to Rachel. She didn't need to. But that night, as we fled deeper into the mountains, heading toward a future without fake names or secret files, I checked the drive one last time. And that's when I saw it. A hidden folder. Locked. Encrypted. With one word, echo dot. I opened it and found something impossible. A photo. Of me. Holding the same girl in my arms. Only, the date on the file said it was taken 5 years before she was born. They say some stories never really end, only shift into silence, waiting to be remembered again. And maybe that's what I've come to accept, that some truths aren't meant to be solved like puzzles but endured like scars. After the upload, everything changed overnight. News outlets picked it up in pieces, classified experiment exposed, deep state project echo leaks, family manipulation scandal rocks intelligence community. But the media only scratched the surface, cherry-picking the most digestible horrors for primetime. They didn't talk about the children who'd grown up believing they were someone else, the parents who'd been replaced by handlers, the broken identities engineered for long-term obedience. They didn't mention that most of the victims wouldn't even recognize their own faces in old photos anymore. And they definitely didn't talk about how the original program had been quietly rebranded 3 times over, embedded into new systems, new names, still watching, still waiting for someone to forget. Because that's the thing about psychological operations, they're not just about control. They're about erasure. You don't need to rewrite a person's life if you can just make them doubt it enough to destroy themselves. Natalie and I spent the next few months moving. Not running exactly, but never staying. We avoided digital trails. Burned through aliases like matches. But we never hid the truth from our daughter. We told her everything in pieces as much as a child could understand. How she was born to us but stolen, reprogrammed, embedded with a narrative that made us strangers to her own memories. How the people who claimed to protect her were only rehearsing a script. And how she still had the right to choose what story she believed about herself. There were nights she cried, clinging to photos that no longer made sense, asking why her other mommy told her I was dangerous. But over time those questions softened. Not because they went away, but because she started realizing some answers weren't hers to carry alone. She started calling me Dad, again. Not because I asked her to, but because one morning she woke up and said she dreamed of a voice that felt like home, and it was mine. Grayson, the prosecutor Natalie mentioned, held up his end. He shielded us as best he could, helped verify the leak's authenticity, and issued sealed subpoenas that rattled the right cages. But even he admitted the machine was too big to stop entirely. Some operatives were arrested. Some vanished. And some were simply reassigned under different government titles with plausible deniability. A few of the families impacted by the ECHO program came forward anonymously. Others stayed buried under NDAs and threats. But there was one moment that brought a strange kind of peace. A letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just one sentence. Asterisk. I remember the music box. Asterisk. It was from Rachel. Natalie didn't say much when she read it. Just quietly folded the letter and put it in a shoebox beside the flash drive. I think she knew deep down that Rachel had never stopped protecting us. Not entirely. She'd just been trapped in the same machine we were. A ghost of herself, still trying to pull the brakes on something designed to run without a conscience. She paid the price for that choice. I think we all did in different ways. And then came the moment I wasn't ready for, the photo. I'd stared at it 100 times by then, me holding our daughter years before her birth, smiling like I had no idea what would come next. The metadata was clean. Time-stamped. Not edited. No digital manipulation. Natalie thought it might have been an early Echo imprint. A memory uploaded, then copied into another timeline to test continuity. Like déjà vu but weaponized. If that's true, it means I wasn't just a target. I may have been part of the experiment before I ever knew it started. That shook me more than anything else. Because if memory could be bent like that, then identity wasn't just fragile, it was manufactured. Synthetic. Conditional. But one morning, while walking with my daughter through a small coastal town under assumed names, something shifted. We passed a shop window with music boxes. She stopped, pointed at a silver one with roses etched on the lid and whispered, "That's the one. From the other place." She didn't say more. Didn't need to. Because in that moment I realized something that all the files and data never explained. Maybe the truth doesn't live in facts. Maybe it lives in fragments, feelings, echoes, instincts that outlast manipulation. Maybe the human soul isn't as programmable as they thought. So we bought the music box that we keep it on a shelf now wherever we go. Not because we need it to prove anything, but because it reminds us of what can't be taken. Well, choice. Memory. Not the ones in our heads, the ones in our hearts. And as for the hidden folder labeled Echo, I haven't opened it again. Not because I'm afraid, but because I finally understand that some doors, once unlocked, don't just change what you know, they change who you are. And maybe for now it's enough just to be. Still, some nights I lie awake wondering who else is out there. How many others have lived lives that weren't theirs, raised children they didn't birth, loved people they were assigned to forget. And I wonder if any of them will ever find the music box or the flash drive, or the courage to ask questions no one wants answered. I wonder if this story is really mine, or just a version someone let me keep. Either way I'll keep telling it, because someone has to remember. Even if the world forgets.